Here we go again. Paramount's Halo series has officially begun to air weekly on Paramount Plus, and I've just watched the first episode. Halo fans, don't bother. Full spoilers ahead. For those who don't know, Halo was originally heavily inspired by the fantastic sci-fi action movie Aliens. As fans of that movie might expect, that means, in the beginning at least, there was an emphasis on the grittiness and machismo of boots-on-the-ground soldiers fighting against a much tougher alien faction, in this case the Covenant. Playing as the mysterious Master Chief, a Spartan II super soldier augmented specifically for warfare beyond what an average human could do, the players would traverse a Halo ring world, and often do so while fighting alongside wisecracking and bickering UNSC soldiers, battling the Covenant until ultimately encountering a far more dangerous threat, the Flood. Parasites capable of turning any fleshy being into a Cronenberg-esque zombie abomination. There's a lot more to the series as a whole, spanning not only the game series, but a beloved series of original novels, as well as various other types of media, even anime, for you weebs out there. But by and large, there are certain things that are expected of a Halo adaptation, and this first episode shits on them all. We open on a planet called Madrigal, home of a human faction of rebels at war with the UNSC. Here we meet Quan, a dumb young girl who travels out to the woods with her equally dumb friends searching for a plant they can use to get high. They find it, they get high, then all of Quan's friends are brutally exploded and or vaporized by the sudden off-screen appearance of the Covenant. I laughed, I smiled, it was a good time all around, except Quan lived and leads the aliens back to her home. See, while the UNSC have apparently been battling the Covenant for an unspecified period of time, rebel groups like this, who live far enough away from the threat, think all that talk of aliens is just UNSC propaganda meant to distract them. So 200 people die, women and children included. Frankly, the Covenant need to step up their game a bit. This is the kind of thing Anakin Skywalker would do himself during a single temper tantrum. But yeah, so everyone Quan knows and loves dies very violent deaths. This is a positive for the show. They don't hold back too much on the violence. Limbs are blown off, people are popped like skin balloons, skewered on energy swords, and are otherwise brutalized. Likewise, we see a lot of violent alien deaths as well. It all goes a long way to showing how gruesome war can get, as well as establishing the Covenant as a threat. We only ever see elites in this episode, but they're pretty imposing. Quan, who unfortunately still lives, watches as a small team of Spartans, Master Chief included, decimate the elites pretty easily. At first glance, this is exactly the kind of action you'd hope to see in a Halo show, except it kinda sucks. See, they clearly had a tough time making the large Spartans look convincing on screen. Actors in bulky suits of armor lumber around kinda clumsily in close-ups, and then suddenly transition into super fast and seemingly weightless CGI models. It doesn't work at all. This isn't a low-budget series either. There's some decent money backing it, but the general CGI animation is just not convincing in the slightest. There's a jarring difference between the computer-generated models and the live-action actors. They don't mesh together well. Nor is either method good enough on its own. That's a problem. But anyway, the Spartans kill every elite on sight and then promptly leave Quan's bloody little outpost. Having just lost everyone she cared about, she just kinda follows the Spartans, even though they barely acknowledge her and don't intend to bring her along. Nothing else for her to do, really. The Spartans head to a nearby cave, which contains a mysterious MacGuffin unearthed by the Covenant. Master Chief touches it, and it immediately starts to unlock suppressed childhood memories of his family. It also apparently affects his body and mind in other ways, which we'll talk more about later. There is an elite in the cave. It runs outside and bumps into Quan, knocking her unconscious. It's hilarious. Master Chief just kinda reluctantly grabs her and takes her to a ship, splitting up from his team, which is breaking protocol according to another Spartan. Chief doesn't care. Now flying through space on the way to a UNSC base, Quan wakes up. She gets a hologram call from Miranda Keyes, who... Oh. Huh. Sure, why not? She wants Quan to send messages to other rebels and tell them the UNSC are the goodies, and the Covenants are real, blah blah blah. Quan won't, because she still sees the UNSC as the enemy. Fast forwarding a bit, Master Chief brings Quan a meal. She's a sarcastic little shit. Then she tells Master Chief that he killed her mommy several years earlier at some sort of peaceful rebel convention. Because of course he did. Elsewhere, Miranda Keyes talks to her dad, the iconic Captain Jacob Keyes from the first game who... Oh. Yay, more progressive points. Someone's saving up for an Applebee's gift card. Anyway... They talk for a bit. They reveal Dr. Halsey is her mom. I didn't mention Halsey yet, but we cut to her lab earlier. She saw the change in Chief's biology through his armor sensors, blah blah. Captain Keyes tells Miranda that, that Quan girl died of her injuries during the flight. But how could that be? Miranda just talked to her and she was fine. Oh no, the UNSC are willing to kill a teenage girl. Still on the way, Chief gets the order to execute Quan. Instead, he starts disabling all of the cameras on board so nobody can spy on him. The UNSC starts screwing with the ship's life support system, so Chief and Quan collapse, but Chief luckily lands next to the exact panel he needed to punch through in order to manually correct things again. Halsey and Keyes have a brief back and forth with their superior. Mother Superior wants them to kill Master Chief upon arrival. Halsey gets big sad. The other Spartans suit up to meet Chief. Halsey tells them to ignore the kill order and save him, turning against their fellow soldiers if necessary. Chief crash lands at the base, after taking his helmet off, mind you, to make friends with Quan. Yeah, he spends the last 10 minutes of the episode without his helmet. And just look at this sad sack. That face definitely screams battle-hardened war machine. Sure. Quan asks why a Spartan is trying to save her, to which Chief responds, I don't know. Which kind of implies that alien device messed with his head in more ways than unlocking some memories, but I don't know. Chief activates the artifact again, for some reason, when the UNSC surround his ship. It acts like an EMP, conveniently, and disables the power in a large radius around it. The soldiers prepare for a fight, and the Spartans prepare to turn on them. Oh, and somewhere in all this thrilling content, we cut to High Charity, the massive space jellyfish where the Covenant live. We see the Prophet of Mercy, who actually looks pretty cool. The Prophets are redesigned slightly from the games, but still recognizable. Oh, and we also meet a human girl who the Covenant raised. Like, they adopted her, I guess? And they treat her with reverence and... fuck this. There were a couple of things I liked. The actress playing Dr. Halsey did a great job, and the brief moments involving her character were intriguing, I guess. I also appreciate that they don't try too hard to establish a shit ton of backstory, instead choosing to hit the ground running with their plot, however ill-advised their story may be. But ultimately, the first game did it better. The opening half hour of Halo Combat Evolved established the characters, tone, the setting, taught the player gameplay mechanics, and landed Master Chief on a Halo ringworld. Episode 1 of this live-action show instead goes with the generic, the military and government are shady storyline from the beginning. That existed in the series prior to this, sure, the whole Spartan 2 program is the definition of immoral, but there were far more important things for the show to establish. For example, there's no Halo in the first episode of this Halo show. You know, the thing the damn franchise is named after. Halos are kind of a big deal. Moving on. The action is not well done. The CGI is pretty shoddy at times, and beloved characters are mostly unrecognizable in both appearance and personality, to the point where they may as well just use different names. And even if these problems didn't exist, Quan single-handedly kills any possibility of enjoying this show. Yeah, I get it, she's there to be the sarcastic and disrespectful tag-along who we're supposed to grow to appreciate over time as she becomes a loyal, plucky sidekick. She's Ellie. Except Halo doesn't need an Ellie, and Master Chief sure as shit doesn't need a teenage girl sidekick. And don't get me started on Master Chief himself. This version is just pathetic. Unfortunately, it seems any trace of the tough and tactical Master Chief we know died when he touched that artifact. Now he's an emotional, impulsive simp from episode 1. Man, we didn't even have Sergeant Johnson here to kick ass, take names, and entertain the hell out of us. And again, if they had just adapted the first game, he would have been in this episode early on. I don't even know if he's been cast in this show at all, come to think of it. If they end up leaving out the most prominent black character from the games, and meanwhile race-swapped other established characters, then that's just lame no matter how you look at it. But I won't be there to find out if Sergeant Johnson is in later episodes, because I am washing my hands of this show. They have no respect for the source material at all. And I'm done supporting that kind of bullshit. I'd say watch the first episode only if you're morbidly curious, otherwise just pretend it doesn't exist. I'm sorry guys, I try to be the optimistic, let's give it a chance kind of guy, but I'm done. I'm done with that. I'm done giving the benefit of the doubt to these hacks who take established properties and write, you can't even call it fan fiction, because fan fiction implies that you're a fan to some degree. These fuckers admitted that they didn't even look at the games, or the books, I believe. So seriously, fuck these people. I'm baffled. And I hope to see you guys next time. Bye.